I'm Katherine Sanderson, the Polar Family Professor of Psychology at Amherst College, and I am so looking forward to talking to you today about goal setting. This year will be different, how to actually stick to your resolutions, and I'm going to be talking about why setting goals is so important and what we can all do to end 2023, perhaps having set and stuck with our resolutions, be a little bit better than we did in the last year. So I want to start by talking about some of the most common New Year's resolutions that people set. And before I show you the answers, I want you to just think for yourself, or if you're with somebody, you could verbalize aloud. What do you think are the most common New Year's resolutions that people set each year? So I'm just going to give you a second to think about those. And spoiler alert, I think you're going to be right about what many of these are. Many of these, I can say I've tried to set and stick with myself. So here's the answer. Losing weight, number one most common resolution. And although that is a set resolution, what you will see is that many of the other strategies actually kind of relate to that first one. So losing weight is the first one, but then so is sticking to a healthier diet and exercising regularly. Of course, those are probably in service, at least in part, of the losing weight resolution. The fourth most common, making better financial choices. So this could be saving money, it could be spending less, it could be investing better, something like that. Quitting smoking is a common resolution. This one is actually less common now than it used to be. And that's mostly because if we look at the rates of smoking within the United States, at least, there's just been a dramatic decrease in this. So if we look, 20 or 30 years ago, quitting smoking was actually a pretty high level resolution, pretty common. And although it's still kind of common, it's less so than it used to be, only because fewer people are smoke, so they can't quit. And then finally, spending time with family. And this is one that has been consistently pretty high. I think this has probably ebbed and flowed a little bit, in part due to the pandemic, in which some people felt like they were spending a lot of time with their family already. So that's one that may in fact have changed due to sort of global issues. So these are pretty common resolutions. I'm willing to bet that virtually everyone listening right now has probably set at least one of these resolutions, maybe this year, maybe in a year past. Certainly, I think I've actually done all of these except for the quitting smoking one at some point. So we know what people often try to do, and yet here's the reality. This, again, is not going to be the most surprising thing that I say today. Only about 12% of people who set a New Year's resolution actually at the end of the year feel that they've achieved it. So that's a pretty low percentage. And what we know is that many people, not everyone, but many people do set some kind of New Year's resolutions. And yet again, most people, the vast majority of people in the year thinking, well, I set that resolution. Maybe I stuck with it for a couple weeks, a month, but at the end of the year, I have not accomplished quitting smoking, losing weight, spending more time with my family, saving money, whatever it is. However, the good news is setting a New Year's resolution actually increases substantially your odds of actually achieving it. So what we know is that the mere act of setting a resolution, trying to accomplish a goal, verbalizing it or writing it down, actually is a significant predictor of at least increasing the likelihood that you are going to achieve your goal. And this is really important for us all to remember, that setting a goal, in fact, is the first step, not the only step, not the, in fact, predicting factor necessarily, but a first step is, in fact, at least setting some kind of resolution. So what's so good about setting goals? And in psychology, we talk about goals as something that a person is consciously, deliberately, intentionally trying to achieve. So a goal is not something that happens at chance. It's not something that sort of lurks below the surface. It's something that you verbalize to yourself, that you say, this year, this month, today, whatever, I am going to try to achieve this. And usually when we talk about goals, there are two other key things. One, they often focus on some kind of deliberate standard. So it may not be, I want to be a C student. It's often, I want to achieve all A's or achieve this sort of high level of GPA. Athletes often don't say, I want to run. They say, I want to run this fast or this many miles this year or something. So they often have some kind of standard of excellence, and they often have some kind of time frame. So it's not just, I want to read books, but I want to read X many books this year. I want to lose this many pounds this month or this week, or, I want to smoke this many fewer cigarettes today or whatever. So you often see a focus on a standard of achievement. You often see a focus on a time frame. For anyone here who is a sports fan or athlete, you already know that setting goals is one of the most common strategies that athletes use. This is something that sports psychologists regularly work with elite athletes and teams on. What are your goals for the year? And let's work on then strategies for achieving them. So we know that there is a lot of power in terms of setting goals. So here are some sort of common examples of things that people may set as a goal for a given year. So read 12 books this year. So basically, read a book a month. Walk 10 miles a week. So again, this could be, here's my exercise kind of goal. Clean my garage. This is like a, one-time thing. I want to do this task that I've been putting off that's, on my mind. Keep a gratitude journal. So this example is about adopting a new habit. So I haven't been keeping a gratitude journal this year. I'd like to start doing that. Meditate. Again, similarly to the gratitude journal, this is about establishing a practice, a daily habit, a mantra. Volunteer weekly. So again, you can see this is a time limited goal. This is specifically how often I want to do this goal, and volunteering in some capacity. Do a daily crossword puzzle. So this could be sort of, brain teaser, Sudoku. Personally, I am addicted to the New York Times spelling bee. I don't know if anyone else does that, but that's, certainly something that I look forward to every single day. And so again, these are examples of different things that people could set, that they could work for. These vary in terms of how much time they take. They vary in terms of the type of activity, but they're all examples of things that people could set as worthwhile, personally meaningful goals to work on this year. Oh, sorry, one more. Learn to knit. So this could be adopting a new strategy, a new practice, a new hobby. And I now want to talk about why just setting that goal may in fact be effective. And there are a number of different strategies that psychologists have determined explain why setting goals actually tends to work. One, goals provide a sense of purpose and direction. So having a particular goal can give us a sense of, okay, this is how I'm going to structure my life. This is how I'm going to pursue something. This can give me a sense of direction in my life. And setting a goal can actually provide an important, in that sense, sort of lift up in terms of mood, because feeling a lack of direction, a lack of purpose is one of the sort of hallmarks of clinical depression. For many people, the years of the pandemic led them to lack a sense of purpose and direction, which is why I think there's now a focus on what we really can do to set and work towards goals. So providing a sense of purpose and direction. They also focus your attention. Okay, so what am I going to do today? What am I going to do this weekend? What am I going to do this week? That goals can give you a sense of focus on how we are going to go about structuring our lives, structuring our time, perhaps structuring our money in ways that lead us to be able to accomplish them. So in that sense, goals might kind of clear out the noise and the background and lead us to focus more directly on something. Goals increase effort and motivation. So when you set a goal, you may be motivated to achieve it. So if I have a goal of reading a book a month, which I don't have, but I probably should have, that might lead me to increase effort towards accomplishing it. So at the end of the night, maybe I'll put away my phone and pick up a book from my nightstand and devote time and attention to actually reading that instead of, scrolling through my phone or watching TV or something. Goals prolong persistence. So when we have a goal, we are more likely to say, okay, I'm going to keep working towards it. Even if something initially isn't going that well, a goal can give us a sense of, I should persist. I should keep working towards this. So even when things get frustrating or it rains, so you're not able to run that day, it can give you a sense of persistence even when things aren't going well, because you have this motivation, this intentionality towards actually accomplishing something. And finally, goals create new learning strategies. So maybe you have a goal of reading a book a month, and yet you are not actually accomplishing that. You're falling asleep too quickly in the night, so you're not actually focusing on that. A goal can actually lead you to develop a new strategy. Hey, maybe instead of reading the book, I'm going to listen to a book on tape or a podcast as I'm driving. That's going to be a way of helping me actually accomplish my goal. So goals can create new learning strategies, things that you haven't tried or done before. So these are all different theories within psychology that explain the link between setting a goal and actually achieving it. And as you can probably imagine, all of these are probably right. It's not that you have to pick one. Now, I want to turn to 3 key quotes about goal setting. For those of you who've seen me do a talk for One Day University before, you know that I'm a big fan of quotes. And I find that relying on quotes can often be helpful to people to sort of conceptualize what they're trying to do and why. Now, for those of you who've heard me give a talk for One Day U before, you probably know that I'm a big fan of quotes. And I'm giving you now 3 key quotes about goal setting that are really different from one another, in part because I really want you to recognize 3 key things. And these quotes are going to illustrate 3 very different things. 1, my goal is not to be better than anyone else, but to be better than I used to be. This is one of my favorites because here's the key. Goal setting is very individual. I'm going to talk more about that later on today. But the key is that goal setting should be, how are you today? And is it different than how you were yesterday or last week or last month or last year? It's not about how are you compared to this person or this person or this person, your friend, neighbor, colleague, romantic partner, whatever. And so goal setting in that sense is very individual. And we often, I think, are pushed to set goals that are about social comparison. I wish I were, as wealthy as this person or as thin as this person or whatever. Goal setting is most effective when it's individual and it's talking about change within yourself over time. So that's 1. 2, goal setting requires re-upping it. So I love this quote about motivation. People often say that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. That's why we recommend it daily. So I love this example because I think people often think about goal setting. Well, I set the goal, why am I not achieving it? And the reality is, for most of us, goal setting is about creating, adopting, and sticking with a new habit. And habits take a while to develop. And so you do have to remind yourself, maybe even daily, why am I doing this? What is my motivation? And most of us, shower regularly, brush our teeth a couple times a day. And we don't think, it's such a pain that I have to remember to brush my teeth twice a day. It's just something that most of us do, and it's a habit. And it doesn't become something that we have to remind ourselves to do. It just happens naturally. And that's true after you've adopted a new habit or strategy, but it's not true initially. So it's really important to remember that reminding yourself and increasing motivation on an ongoing kind of way makes sense. It's what we do when we're acquiring a new habit. And this 3rd quote is just humorous, but I really like it. And it's by Bill Murray. Whatever you do, always give 100% unless you're donating blood. So I like that quote because the reality is, sometimes we can give 100% to our goals, but sometimes we can't. So I want everyone to remember that sometimes you have to cut yourself some slack. Sometimes you have to give yourself some grace and say, you know what? I had this goal. This was a hard week and it didn't happen. And that's okay. The key is recognizing that sometimes your motivation, energy, effort may fade. And that doesn't mean that you need to give up your goal. It means you need to cut yourself some slack and then kind of get back on that horse. And I'll talk about some strategies for doing that later on. All right, so I now want to turn to some sort of key principles of what do we know from psychology about effective goal setting. And the key about these strategies is that it's not enough to say, here's my goal. It's really important to set goals that are going to be effective. All goals are basically not created equal. So, one, it is really important to set specific and measurable goals. So many of us have a tendency to set what we call subjective goals. I'd like to lose weight. I'd like to be more productive. I'd like to have better relationships. My favorite examples of these are often things like, I'd like to try hard, or I'd like to give it my all. These are sort of bland, bumper sticker kind of statements. And the challenge of setting subjective goals is that you never know if you've accomplished them. So have fun. Try my hardest, be more productive. When have you done that? When have you had fun? When have you given it your all? And so on. And setting these subjective goals doesn't give us as much satisfaction because there's not an endpoint. There's not a way to accomplish them in a sense. In contrast, when you set objective goals, there's very clear evidence about you succeeded or you failed. So lose 10 pounds. You can tell if you've accomplished that or not, or if you're getting closer. Make daily to-do lists. So I'm a big fan of the to-do list. And this could be saying every day, I'm going to write a list of what are my goals for the day. And then I can, at the end of the day, say, hey, did I accomplish these? Did I not? Spend 5 hours a week with friends. As I talked about at the beginning today, one of the most common goals people set is trying to spend more time with friends, family members, loved ones. So you can set a specific goal. I want to have a plan with a friend or a family member every week. I want to have at least one social activity a week. I want to volunteer weekly, whatever it is. If you set an objective goal that's very specific and measurable, you'll know, did I accomplish it or did I not? So first of all, if you've accomplished your goals that are specific, measurable, objective, you can then have a sense of pride. Hey, I set this goal, I worked towards it, I accomplished it. And at the end of the week, if you learned, oh, I actually didn't do these things, you can then develop new and better strategies because you think, well, here were my goals, I worked towards them, but I did not actually achieve them. You then learn that you need new and different strategies to be successful. So that kind of feedback is in fact very helpful. So set specific and measurable goals. 2, set challenging but realistic goals. So this is sort of finding the sweet spot of psychology. Now I'm making this gesture because if I was standing behind a whiteboard, I would be writing right now. What we know in psychology is that the sweet spot of setting goals are goals that are moderately difficult. Goals that are too easy are not motivational because they're just really easy to accomplish. So walking 10 minutes a day might be very achievable, but it's not very motivating. You probably walk 10 minutes a day even without trying, just walking around your house or to your car or whatever. So setting goals that are too low level don't give you the excitement and energy and motivation and drive of actually working towards something. Too easy. Goals that are too hard are really demoralizing. So if you have a goal, I'm going to set a goal that would be too hard for me. This would be running a marathon. That is a goal that I've never set, never will set. That would really not be achievable for me. And so setting goals that are impossible make it hard to achieve. And they, again, are demotivating, demoralizing. So what we know is that setting goals that are challenging, but realistic, we call those moderately difficult goals, are what give people a sense of effort and drive and intentionality and then pride, but they're also able to be accomplished. In one classic research study, researchers compared 3 groups of people. This was about a study about trying to help people conserve energy in their homes. So one group of families were asked to reduce their energy consumption by 20%. So that was challenging, but it's feasible. It's not, 80% or something. Another group of people were asked to reduce energy consumption by 2%. And this is very achievable, but it's really not very hard. This could be turning out some lights or taking slightly shorter showers or doing fewer loads of laundry, etc. And other families were asked to make no changes. So these were people in the control group. When the researchers then went back and looked at how people had done in accomplishing their goals, what they found is the first group had actually achieved the most, they had conserved the most. There was no difference in energy consumption rate between people who'd set the 2% goal and the control group, people in the no change condition. And that's because 2% is such a tiny little goal that people didn't even really conceptualize it, work towards it, et cetera. So it's really important to set goals that are in fact challenging, but are also realistic in terms of increasing motivation, drive, and accomplishing the goal. Set short and long-term goals. So this idea is really to set goals at different kinds of levels, not just by the end of the year, I want to have read 12 books or lost 10 pounds or quit smoking, but it's also about setting short-term goals. It's very hard to maintain motivation to work towards a goal that's a year away or even longer. It's much better to get a sense of satisfaction by setting and working towards short-term goals that are in the pursuit of these longer-term goals. In one really clever study, researchers brought in people and they gave them a punch card. And the punch card had 8 squares that you had to get punched in order to earn a free car wash. So here's sort of an example of a kind of punch card, although this is about coffee. Now, people in another group were given a punch card that had 10 squares, like the example that I'm showing you of the coffee, but 2 of the squares were actually punched. The researchers handed them the card, but they then said, you know what, I'm going to give you 2 free punches. And they just clicked those 2. So what you can see in this case is that both groups, the first group and the second group, had to do 8 car washes in order to get a free car. So 8 was the same. But one group felt like they had a head start because they got these 2 free punches, even though, again, what you had to do was the same in both groups. And here's what they found. People in the group with the 2 free punches that were given were 82% more likely to end up actually earning the free car wash. Because again, they were like, oh, you know what? I've already started towards this goal. And that's a really clever example, frankly, of something called behavioral economics in terms of increasing people's motivation and drive because they had these 2 free punches. Motivation increases when we feel we are working towards, getting closer towards a goal. So setting short-term goals and long-term goals is a really important strategy in terms of increasing motivation. It's also important to set the right types of goals. And I'm going to focus here on a distinction between what we call process goals and outcome goals. This is, again, a technique that is very commonly used in sports psychology, in which many athletes focus primarily on the outcome goals. I want to win the Super Bowl or the national championship. I want to go undefeated. So these big sort of major outcome goals, as opposed to thinking about the processes that are important in order to help you achieve that goal. So I want to give you this distinction. Outcome goals focus on a result, the final outcome. Process goals focus on the specific actions that you need to take in order to achieve that outcome. Let me give you some specifics here, which I think will help you understand why this process is in fact really important in terms of the strategy towards working towards an outcome goal. So let's say your outcome goals, I want to lose weight. I want to lose, 10 pounds by the end of the year or whatever. Obviously, the right way to achieve that outcome goal would be to say, I'm going to eat healthier foods. I'm going to make a strategy of making healthier food choices at home, in restaurants and so on. Selecting smaller portions would be another example. So might be exercising regularly to burn off more calories, change your metabolism. Those would all be examples of process goals that would help you eventually over time achieve this outcome goal. What's actually a much less good strategy is fasting, because fasting, in fact, can help you lose weight, but fasting is not really a sustainable strategy towards making a lifestyle change that when I want to lose weight, I'm just not going to eat. It's possible to do that, but it's not particularly healthy. And it can actually lead to other consequences, feeling faint, having trouble concentrating, and so on. So when we talk about losing weight, what we're really talking about is trying to make healthy lifestyle choices that are sustainable over time. A college student might set the goal of, I want to increase my GPA. And as a college professor, I hope many college students achieve that through a positive way, such as, I want to spend more time studying. I want to attend class more. I want to take better notes. I want to study better. What I hope they don't use as a strategy is, I'd like to cheat. I'd like to plagiarize. So again, that's an example about how it's not as important what the goal is as the strategies that we're using to achieve that goal. Now, you've probably heard about so-called SMART goals. And this is a wonderful mnemonic that can really help keep a lot of the principles of goal setting in mind. So SMART goals are specific. I've talked about that before. Objective. They are measurable. Again, did you lose 10 pounds? Did you not lose 10 pounds? Did you read 12 books? Did you not read 12 books? They are also achievable. I've talked about that before. They are realistic. So setting a goal that you actually can achieve, that's not too impossible, is really important. And that relates to, is it a realistic goal for you to do? So maybe I could set a goal for running a marathon, but that's not really realistic in terms of the amount of time and energy that I would have to train, for example. And then finally, they are time bound. So a SMART goal is not, I want to eventually read 12 books. A SMART goal is, I want to read 12 books this year. So it's not time, endless amounts of time. That when we talk about SMART goals, they have an endpoint in mind. And I want to give you an example here. Let's say that you have a goal of, I want to go to California. That's not a great goal for a variety of different reasons. Not that I don't love California. So the California part is good, but it's too vague a goal across lots of different dimensions. So when you say, I want to go to California, California is a big state. When you say, I want to go to California, does that mean you want to go hiking in Yosemite National Park? Does it mean you want to go to San Diego and go to the beach? Does it mean you want to go to San Francisco and, ride on a cable car or whatever? So again, those are examples of specificity that would help you work towards that goal. What is your point in going to California? What is the thing you want to do? Be specific. Is it measurable? It is. That's a good part of the goal. Is it achievable? It is achievable. So it's not saying, I want to go to the moon, for example. Is it realistic? And that probably depends on your financial well-being, where you live. It's maybe more achievable if you live in Oregon or Nevada and it's a drive, as opposed to if you live in Maine, again, depending on finances. So again, setting a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, but also time-bound. When? So get out your calendar. If you want to go to California in 2023, choose a location. I want to go to San Diego. I want to go to LA, whatever. And I'm going to go spring break. I'm going to go over the summer. I'm going to go for Thanksgiving, and be specific. So these are examples of how SMART goals play out. Now, finally, and this is perhaps the most important thing I'm going to say, it's really important to set the right goal. And to give you an example of this, I want to describe the story of the Mexican fisherman. Some of you may be familiar with this. I'm going to read just for a minute, actually, from my own book where I describe this. But here's the story, and it's short, don't worry. There's a wonderful short story about a wealthy tourist who comes across a fisherman taking a nap in his boat. The tourist approaches the fisherman and urges him to continue fishing, pointing out that working harder could, over time, allow him to earn enough money to own multiple boats and have other people do the fishing for him. The fisherman asks why that should be his goal. And the tourist responds, then, without a care in the world, you could sit here in the harbor, doze in the sun, and look at the glorious sea. Of course, that's exactly what the fisherman is already doing. So, I want to focus now, just briefly, on the importance of setting the right goals. That some of us set these goals that aren't really in pursuit of what we are trying to achieve. So really think through, what is the point of your goal? How is it going to allow you to live a happier, better life? And make sure you're setting a goal that really works for you and what you want to achieve, how you want to live your life. Finally, one of the key benefits that we now know from research in neuroscience is that the mere act of goal setting actually seems to rewire the brain. It's one of the reasons why sports psychologists often focus on techniques such as visualization or imagery, because there is evidence, in fact, that just thinking about something rewires parts of the brain that make it easier to achieve those goals. How does this work? Well, in part, we know that the amygdala, part of the brain that is in charge of emotion, actually evaluates how important that goal is to you. Goals that are really important to you at an emotional level, that you really feel them, in fact, are easier to achieve. We also know that the frontal lobe of the brain, this is the part of the brain that's sort of logical, problem-solving center, actually helps you focus on how you can achieve that goal. So goal setting seems to activate and rewire particular parts of the brain, making it easier for you to achieve your goals. All right, I'm now going to turn to specific strategies that you can use to accomplish and achieve your goals. And again, I want you to turn back to that very goal that you set earlier in this talk when I asked you to think about what your goal is for this year. So one, pick the right goal. So again, a goal that is personally meaningful to you, helps you live a happier, better life, but also pick the right strategy. Many times we might feel pressure to pursue a goal that other people around us are doing. Oh, I know I should read more. Everybody tells me to read more. Well, I know I should meditate. Everybody meditates. Those might be great goals for some people. If they're not great goals for you, don't choose them. As Stephen Covey says, motivation is a fire from within. If someone else tries to light that fire under you, chances are it will burn very briefly. So setting a goal that is personally meaningful for you is really important. But it's also really important to pick the right strategy. So let's say that you and a friend both set the goal of, I'd like to exercise more this year. I'd like to exercise at least, 3 hours a week or something. There are lots of different ways of accomplishing that goal. For some people, it might be taking an aerobics class. For other people, it might be playing tennis or basketball. For other people, it might be biking or jogging. It doesn't matter what the goal is. What matters really is the strategy that you are setting towards achieving it. So think through a strategy that's going to be useful and good for you. That for different people, there can be different strategies that are going to be easier to attain and most effective. 2, make a plan. And this means that it's not just saying, okay, here's my goal, but it's also saying, how am I going to achieve it? So I talked before about setting long-term and short-term goals. What we call that is setting sub-goals. So if your goal is to read 12 books a year, that's probably to read a book a month. And that might mean, okay, every night I need to read for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or X number of pages. Those are examples of sub-goals that will help you work towards that goal. You also need to lay out a timeline. So if your timeline, again, is reading 12 books a year, a timeline of a book a month is going to be important. At the end of each month, you can say, hey, did I finish a book or not? If you finished a book, great. If you didn't, you probably need to spend more time reading or develop a new strategy for accomplishing that. Reading for longer, reading twice a day, et cetera. Choosing shorter books, that could be another strategy. A goal is a dream without a deadline. And that's really important because if you don't set through the sub-goals and the timeline, it's much harder to actually achieve that goal because you don't know what to work towards to make that goal happen. 3, write it down. The mere act of writing something down is extremely important in terms of helping that act of the brain rewiring, but it also means that it becomes visible to you. Many athletes write down goals and they post them in locker rooms. You might write down goals and post them on your refrigerator or your medicine cabinet or your bulletin board or something. Again, so that the goals are not just abstract, they are clear, they are specific, and you are reminded of them. I have a wonderful story that I love about this, which is a story about Olympic swimmer Katie Ledecky. Maybe you remember her success. So here's an example of her goals leading up to the Olympics that happened in Rio. She had a goal of swimming the 400 free race in 3 minutes, 56 seconds, and a goal of swimming the 800 freestyle race in 8 minutes, 5 seconds. So these were her goals. And these, by the way, were like big, like world record kind of goals. So these were her goals. And what she did is she put the numbers 5, 6, 5, so the 56 and the 3 and the 5 after the 8 on a training buoy. And she put this training buoy actually in the pool while she swam. So she saw it before and after she swam every single day. And here were her times in the Rio Olympics. She swam 3:56:46, so just a little bit slower than she had planned in the 400 free. And she actually swam just below her goal in the 800 free. Both of these were world records. So that's just an example of how she set goals. They were specific. She wrote it down, and then she was reminded of them all the time. 4, take a single small step in the right direction. I talked before about that study about the punch cards to get a free car wash, and in particular, how the group that had the 2 free punches were much more likely to actually finish getting all of the punches and get the free car wash. And that's in part because taking a step is really, really important, that we can get overwhelmed by the idea of, oh, how am I going to accomplish this? Taking a single step towards a goal can be extraordinarily effective in terms of increasing motivation. There's a lovely book. This is really a book for writers, so it really resonates with me, maybe with some of you. It's called Bird by Bird by the author Anne Lamott. And in the book, she tells a lovely story about her brother who had to do a book report on birds and was just feeling overwhelmed. There's so many birds. How am I going to do this? Et cetera. And just felt overwhelmed by this prospect of even how to go about tackling this project as a little kid. And then she tells a wonderful story about her dad. Then my father sat down beside him, put his arm around my brother's shoulder and said, bird by bird, buddy, just take it bird by bird. And that's kind of like my mantra. I say it all the time to people. We're going to go bird by bird. And my husband, my kids, know what I mean when I say that. And the idea here is that goals can seem overwhelming to accomplish when they're big. So instead, we take it bird by bird. We're just going to do one step. So if your goal is get your house clean, that is one of my goals for this year. It becomes overwhelming. Oh my gosh, there's so much to do. So you can say, you know what, this weekend, I'm going to clean one closet, or I'm going to clean the cabinet in my bathroom. Again, taking it bird by bird gives people a sense of an ability to accomplish it, to achieve it, and it gives you a sense of satisfaction. Okay, I still got a lot of the house to clean, but I did this one linen closet. So taking it bird by bird, a single step in the right direction. 5, create rewards and punishment. Now, many of us know about the strategy of creating rewards. All the parents out there know this is basically how you get your kid to become toilet trained, right? You use stickers or M&Ms or some kind of treat that you have the sense of, here is the reward. I remember when my daughter is now 18, but I remember when I was trying to toilet train my daughter, and it was not the easiest process. But she was obsessed with Disney princesses. Again, I think she was, about to be 3. So I bought this fabulous snow globe that was like this tall, and it had, Disney princesses in it. And I showed it to her, and she was super excited. Oh my gosh, this is an amazing, thing. And I said, yeah, this is what you get when we get rid of the diapers and move to underpants. This will be in your room. And that's an example of this, big, reward. I will accomplish this. But then, of course, we also did lots of different little sub rewards, stickers, M&Ms, et cetera, each time she successfully stayed dried or used the potty or whatever. Another key, and this is one of my favorite stories. I described this in a textbook that I wrote a number of years ago in health psychology, but it's also a strategy of using punishment. And this is basically creating some fear of something if you fail to accomplish your goal. So we can talk about rewards for accomplishing it. And we can also talk about the threat of punishment for failing to accomplish. And this is a story from a health psychologist about a Black woman who was really, really trying to stop smoking. And so what she told her therapist is, here is $500. She gave her therapist $500. And she says, in 6 months, if I have not successfully stopped smoking, I want you to donate this money to the KKK. Now, that was very, very motivating for her because she couldn't imagine how horrible she was going to feel to have donated money to this obviously racist organization. So you can set things that would be good if you accomplish your goal, that Disney Princess Snow Globe, or things that will be bad if you fail to accomplish it, donating to the KKK. 6, find the right friends. It is much easier to achieve our goals if we have social support from people around us. And this could be family members, it could be friends, it could be colleagues, etc. But people around us influence our goal accomplishment in all sorts of ways. They can encourage you to keep going, even when things are hard. So I actually set a goal this year to run, not like a lot, like 3 miles. That was my goal. It was actually a goal I set in 2022. And I am not a runner. I've never been a runner. I don't even particularly like running, but I just had this goal of trying to accomplish that, trying to be able to own my exercise and to do something and to sort of set out and do it. And my husband was like super supportive. He bought me a pair of running gloves. He helped me sort of look at the weather temperature each day and like find times in which it wouldn't be raining, or, it would be not unbearably hot in July or whatever. And he was just super supportive about my like very, meager little goal of running, which again, was a very new habit for me. So finding people around you who are going to support your goal, who are going to encourage you, is really important. I have this image up because Alcoholics Anonymous and other 12-step programs are a really great example of helping people successfully adopt new habits. And what empirical research shows is that 12-step programs are, in fact, as effective or more effective than individual approaches, such as individual psychotherapy. And one of the reasons for that is that they provide a sense of social support. I'm not in this alone. Other people are going through this as well, but they also provide different kinds of strategies for achieving your goal. So at an AA meeting, people might say, I don't know what to do. I'm attending this wedding this weekend and everybody's going to be drinking and I want to not drink. I want to stick with my goal, but what do you suggest? And in fact, there'll be a room full of people who will have useful strategies. So finding people in your life who you can share your goals with and who will be supportive of your goal is really important. Now, I say find the right friends because it's also the case where sometimes you might have friends that say, no, why are you stopping drinking? There's no problem with drinking, or, why do you want to, read a book or whatever? So finding friends who are going to be helpful to your goal pursuit and not harmful to your goal pursuit is really important. 7, recognize and reduce barriers. So it's also important when you're trying to achieve goals to sort of look into and think about, okay, what are things that are going to get in the way of me accomplishing this goal? Because if you start understanding, well, what are some barriers, then you can actually create workarounds. There's a great book by a professor at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania by Katie Milkman. It's written a great book. I think it's called How to Change. And what she talks about is laying out specifically what are some obstacles for achieving your goal and then creating workarounds. So she has a great example in her book of one of the challenges that people have if they're trying to start exercising is they find it hard if there's anything that can get in the way. So for example, if the gym is far away from your house, that makes it harder. In fact, research has shown that finding ways to exercise that are easy to implement in your daily life substantially increases your odds of doing it. So for example, I bought a treadmill. Treadmill is in my basement. And that means I can always get there. I don't have to find a parking spot. I don't have to wait in line. It's in fact there. I don't have to depend on the weather. It's in fact in my basement. She also describes a wonderful strategy of finding a time each day that you're going to do something, that you're going to read or exercise or, phone a friend or whatever. And again, structuring that into your day is really important. She describes how if you want to exercise first thing in the morning, make sure that your exercise clothes or your shoes or whatever are right there beside your bed. So when you wake up, it's all right there. And again, those are all examples of barriers. Oh, do I have the right shoes? And what time am I going to do it, et cetera? There's research by political scientists that have found that the best predictor of whether people follow through on their intentions to vote is actually having a specific plan. So not just I'm going to vote this year, but I'm going to vote and I'm going to go at my lunch hour. I'm going to go on my way into work or whatever. And my polling location is here. And so maybe I'll stop and get a coffee on the way, whatever. That, again, having a specific example of a time, a place, et cetera, dramatically increases your odds of being able to successfully vote. 8, bounce back from slip-ups and recognize that forming new habits takes time. So this is a really important one because no matter what your goal is, all of us are going to experience some slip-ups. I meant to read this week. It got too crazy. I didn't read. I meant to run this week, but it, rained, or I, twisted my knee and I couldn't really, do that, et cetera, whatever it is. I meant to eat healthy this year, but then I went to Italy and I had a lot of gelato. So again, recognizing that you're going to slip up sometimes. And the key is, once you slip up, do you bounce back? Or do you say, all right, it's over, that goal is gone? So a key is recognizing that once you've had a slip up, you need to kind of get back on that horse in some way. The so-called habit curve actually shows that you don't adopt a full habit until you've been doing something nearly 2 months. That early on, the first, 10, 20 days, you are forming the habit. But it's only after nearly 2 months does it become something that maybe doesn't require so much thought and effort. Again, recognizing that developing a new habit takes time. And if you slip up, the key is not to beat yourself up about it, but just to say, okay, I'm going to return to running, reading, healthy eating, saving money, whatever it is. 9, settle for good enough. You might know the expression, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And this is really this example that for some people it's, well, I set this goal and if I didn't achieve it, I'm just going to give up. But the reality is in many cases, partially achieving a goal is actually still a good thing. So maybe you have the goal of, I want to read a book a month. And maybe you only read half a book a month or 3/4 of a book a month. That's still good. Maybe by the end of the year, you've read 9 or 10 books, and that's great. Maybe you have a goal of running 3 miles a day, and you know what? You're tired, your knees hurt, whatever, and you only run 2 miles a day. That's still good. So the key is that sometimes we hold ourselves up to these like really, really high standards, and we beat ourselves up for not achieving them. Settle for good enough. Settle for some exercise is better than no exercise. Settle for reducing how much you smoke is better than smoking at your old previous level. Maybe you didn't save as much money as you wanted to, but you saved some money. That all of those are examples of good enough, and that's a good thing. Finally, 10, reevaluate your goals and maybe your strategies if necessary. So maybe you get to the point at which you say, you know what, I had this as a goal, but it really isn't speaking to me. I'm not finding it meaningful, and I don't want to keep with it. So I often talk about the science of happiness. And one of the keys of the science of happiness is that meditation is actually very good at increasing happiness, also better health. And so many people have adopted the idea of that would be a good goal. I should meditate more. Meditating is good for you, and there's lots of different ways to do it. But periodically, someone will email me or say to me after a talk, hey, you know what? I tried meditating and I hate it. I find it really boring. I find it really hard to stick to, whatever. And then I say, so don't meditate. So don't do that. Do something else. There's lots of different ways of achieving happiness. So I think the key with that is that if you set a goal, and maybe this is in part you've set a goal because other people are setting it or you should do it, but you look at it and you say, you know what, this is really not working for me and I'm not liking this goal. It's okay to say, okay, I'm going to drop this goal and I'm going to do something different. That's okay. Now, it could also be that maybe you still really like the goal, but you're having trouble doing it. So another example, let's say maybe your goal is, I want to exercise more. But what you found is that running is really boring, or it's hard to find time to golf or play tennis, et cetera. Then thinking about, okay, well, what are other ways in which I could accomplish that goal? So maybe that's, I'm going to jump rope, Or maybe that's I'm going to do jumping jacks, or maybe that's going to be I'm going to go for a brisk walk with a friend, after work. So thinking about what are your goals? Have you accomplished them? Do you need to change your goals? Or is it that the goal is good, but you really need different strategies because the strategies that you were using are really not effective and they're not leading you to be able to accomplish those goals. So that's 10. I also want to say if anyone wants a copy of my slides, reach out to me anytime. That's free. You can also follow me on Instagram, where I talk about happiness and health all the time. And for people who are interested in sort of specific strategies related to happiness and health, a lot of the things that I've talked about today come from my book, The Positive Shift. Thank you so much.